Let's look at the support skills for Preview 3, Part C. In the next preview assignment and in the next class, you will need to be able to calculate the mean of a data set. So if we look at finding the mean of a data set, the average of a data set often refers to the arithmetic mean of the data set. This value is determined by taking the sum of the data points and dividing that sum by the number of data points in the collection. So you can see I highlighted that definition of an arithmetic mean, how we're going to find it. So we can use the following formula and notation. So if we look at this, I would read it as x bar equals sigma x over n. So if we're talking about what all of these things mean, the x with the bar on top of it is the symbol for the mean, the thing that we're trying to find, right? That sigma is the Greek letter that looks kind of like that weird E. And then x is a data point in the list, so it's one of the numbers they gave us. So that sigma x is the notation for finding the sum. That sigma means add them all up of all of the elements in the data set. And then that n is the number of elements in the data set. So it's the number of things that we have. So you can see they explain it in words down here. And our book also gives us a note that the symbol sigma is the capitalized Greek letter sigma and is used as a mathematical shorthand to indicate that several numbers should be added together. So if we look at number 1, the following data represents the ages of students in an English class. You want to find the mean age for the class. So you can see the numbers that they gave us: 21, 25, 27, 31, 19, 24, 27, 24, 19, 20, 29, and 25. So if we look at part A, they ask how many students are in the class and which variable in the formula represents this data. So I rewrote the formula up here so we could keep in mind all those different variables. So if we count up every age listed, it gives us 12. So we know that there's 12 students, and that number of elements represents n. So our n is going to be the 12 students. So for part B, it said find the sum, remember sum means add, of all of the ages of the students, and which variable in the formula represents this data. So when we add up all of these numbers, we get 291. When we look at the formula, the part that's telling us to add everything up is that numerator, that's sigma x. So the 291 represents that sigma x. You can see we talked about that formula for finding average to help us make sense of it, because we knew for finding the mean, we'd have to do 291, what we got when we added everything up, divided by 12. So it helped us to write that and then compare it to the formula to figure out what number we had. If we look at part C, it says actually find the mean of the data set, show your work, and write a contextualized sentence describing what this indicates about the class. So if we think about finding that x bar, that mean, we do the 291 divided by 12, which gives us 24.25. So when we're rounding, we tend to go one decimal value past the data for the mean. So for example, here, all of those data values were whole numbers, so we'll round to the nearest tenth, the one digit after the decimal point. So we can say that the mean is about 24.3 years. If we're writing that as a contextualized sentence, we could say that the average age of a student in this English class is 24.3 years. If we look at number 2, it says in the following data set, the average salaries in 2011 for a doctor in each medical specialty area are shown. So we can see they give us the specialties on the left-hand side of the table and the average annual salary on the right-hand side of this table. So for part A, they ask us which specialty had the highest average salary in 2011 and which specialty had the lowest average salary. So you can see we marked that right on the table. Two specialties were tied for the highest, radiology and orthopedics, because they both had an average annual salary of $315,000. The lowest average annual salary was pediatrics at $156,000. If we look at Part B, they asked, do you think that all radiologists made exactly $315,000 in 2011 and explain? So we said no, that was the average. It's the middle number. So some radiologists made more money and some made less. So for Part C, they asked us to find the average salary for a specialty doctor in 2011, show your work, and write a contextualized sentence for using your answer. So to find the mean, we added up all of the average annual salaries, and we found that there were 8 different specialties there. So when we added them all up, we got this $2,025,000. Then there were 8 specialties, so we divided by 8 to find that that average was $253,125. So we said that amount of money is the average salary for a specialty doctor. If we look at Part D, they ask us to calculate the differences between the mean salary for a specialty doctor in 2011 and the mean salary for each specialty. These values are known as the deviation from the mean. So for radiology, we took that $315,000 that radiologists make and subtract on average and subtracted out that average of all the specialties that we calculated in Part C, the $253,125, and we found that that deviation is $61,875. We did the same thing for pediatrics. We took the average for pediatrics from the table, the $156,000, and subtracted the mean, the $253,125. And here we got a negative answer. So we have negative $97,125. So what that negative deviation means is that pediatrics make less than that average that we calculated. The positive value in radiology means that radiologists made more than that average salary that we calculated. So if we look at cardiology, we took the number from the table, the 314,000, subtracted out the mean that we calculated, and get 60,875. For orthopedics, we took the number from the table, the 315,000, subtracted out the mean that we calculated, and got 61,875. For general surgery, we took that 265,000 number from the table, subtracted out the average for all specialties that we calculated, and got 11,875. For this next one, we got 220,000 from the table, subtracted out that mean for all specialties that we calculated, and got the negative 33,125. Notice that negative, it makes sense because the number that they earned in the table was less than that mean. For psychiatry, it's 170,000 minus the mean that we calculated, which gave us negative 83,125. And for plastic surgery, it was at 270,000 minus the mean that we calculated, which gives us 16,875.